It's the second week of June 2025. I'm Dave. I'm here with Andrew, and you're listening to the second ever episode of BV Weekly, and unfortunately, it's a sad one. As protests against injustice rage in LA, on concert stages, and in our feeds, this week has also been largely defined by deaths in the music world, including our close friend Billy Jones, the losses of icons Brian Wilson and Sly Stone, and industrial legend Douglas McCarthy of Nitzareb. We'll be talking a lot about that, as well as doing some live show recaps and looking at new albums and songs from this week. What's up, Andrew? I think I last saw you at the Turnstile show.
Yes, it's funny because we spent the whole first episode talking about what that's going to be, and then now we know, and it's episode 2. Obviously, it was a blast. 10,000 people under a bridge. For me, it was like they opened up with the title track and Never Enough, and it was like the minute you just heard 10,000 people singing along to the new single of the new album, it just felt like, okay, we're here. We're in the next era of Turnstile. It felt really good.
Yeah, I was definitely happy to get there early to catch opening sets by Baltimore hardcore band End It and Bay Area hardcore band Big Boy. Yeah, they were also both fun. Big Pits. They were followed by Boy Harsher and Tizo Touchdown. Also fun, good sets, and then Turnstile
with special guest Hayley Williams.
That was exciting. Like you said, so she appears on the album, and as your review kind of pointed out, you can't really tell she's on the album.
Yeah, she does like these kind of backing harmonies on Seeing Stars that if you listen really closely, you can hear like, oh, that's obviously like the tone of her voice, but it's definitely not like a guest appearance. Whereas at the show, it was like she sang a full verse, and then her and Brendan like sang the last chorus together in a much more clear, like harmonizing way than on the record, and it was like really, really exciting.
Yeah, unfortunately, I wasn't super close at that point. That venue was insane. There were so many people there, so big, and it was almost like being at a festival. By that point, I was kind of in the back with a group of people, and it felt like I was a mile away, but it was still amazing. It was just great to witness that kind of giant venue energy. And the video really helped, right? There was professional video cameras everywhere, and they had huge screens with doing it all in real time.
Yeah, and like I think this is becoming a theme for Turnstile, where like the type of screen work, I don't know if that's the terminology, but like that they do. Like you didn't go to the Brooklyn Mirage show, right?
No.
So like at Brooklyn Mirage, which is like primarily a venue for electronic music, it's this really wide stage, and behind the entire thing is screen. So it's like, picture if you were like at like a big stage like Radio City, but from like one end to the other is like all screen. So it's way more screen than you usually see at a show. And they had the cameras going where it was like the band was sort of like superimposed on top of crowd footage, and they did something similar to that under the K Bridge too. Like they're always making sure the screens are kind of showing like the crowd almost as much as the band, often at the same time with like different angles like mashed together. So it feels like part of their show that they're like kind of showing you like, hey, like here's the community of people that are here. It's not just us on stage. Like a very hardcore thing, just saying.
It's also a very festival thing, right? So,
but it's unique to it's festivals will be like, here's the artist, here's the crowd. Turnstile like put it together in a way that feels unique to them.
Sure. And I think that's also fresh in your mind. 2 days after Turnstile, you found yourself at GovBall.
Yeah. And another really exciting special guest appearance was, the main reason I went to GovBall was to see Olivia Rodrigo. I went only on Saturday. Also caught Young Miko and Fade, which are both in like the reggaeton Latin trap realm, really fun. But I was really excited for Olivia. She was headlining, and special guest David Byrne came out and did Burning Down the House by, Talking Heads with her. And it was super, super awesome and exciting. And yeah, it was like I did a review of the show, but the big thing that stood out to me was like, you know, I like rock music. I obviously think there's a lot of other important music in the world, but like we're just constantly faced with this: is rock dead conversation? Is it in the past? Is the future something else? And I just feel like it's okay. Like if the answer is like the future can just be a lot of things. Like if you love rock music, you don't have to be like, oh, you're stuck in the past. And obviously, you know, Turnstile is one of the most successful rock bands who are on a steady rise right now. So days after that, you know, we're at a festival where the only rock headliners they've had in recent memory have been legacy bands: Killer, Strokes, Jack White, Tool, bands whose like most popular songs are often at least 20 years old. And then here you get Olivia Rodrigo, who, if you don't actually listen to her or don't listen closely, you're like, oh, it's a pop star. I think I might have heard she was on Disney, High School Musical, whatever. But it's a rock show. It's like completely a rock show. It felt like it took me back to the 90s, really. Like, I mean, like so much of her set, I'm just like, this is what it, like, I mean, okay, I grew up in the 90s, so a lot of my 90s live concerts are footage I've seen, but it felt like that the alt rock punk era of like going to a festival like an early Lollapalooza or Woodstock 94 and seeing just like really guitar driven, dirty, loud, alternative rock, punky energy. And that's like what Olivia brings, and like 85% of her set is rock songs or even punk songs. So it felt really cool to be like, okay, like, you know, this is the newest act at a headline Gov Ball in years to put on like a really rockin' set, and then to bring out David Byrne and do Burning Down the House.
Yeah, I mean, that's
the cherry on top.
Right. As if you had any, you know, if you were self-conscious at all about going to the pop concert, it's like, if we ever put together a Mount Rushmore for Brooklyn Vegan, David Byrne would probably be on there. Mm-hmm. And there he is coming out at the Olivia Rodrigo show, which turned into actually it wasn't even the beginning, but it's been like a big week for David Byrne. Not just the Olivia Rodrigo show. There was that new Talking Heads video that came out days earlier. And then since then, David Byrne announced a new album with also Hayley Williams on there. So this week has been a lot of Hayley Williams, a lot of Turnstile, a lot of David Byrne.
A lot of full circle stuff happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, and David St. Vincent's on the new David Byrne album too. It's called Who Is the Sky? It's his first for Matador Records, which is also cool. You know, the long-running indie label that Interpol and Spoon and Liz Phair and stuff have been on. So that's kind of interesting. And it was made fully with the New York Chamber Ensemble Ghost Train Orchestra. It also features percussion from Tom Skinner and I hope I'm saying Mauro Refusco right. Do you know? But both of Tom York bands, The Smile and Adam's Trapeze, and also the latter was on David Byrne's last record, American Utopia. And yeah, so a lot of cool names. It was produced by Kid Harpoon, who like has kind of gone almost made it as an indie artist to producing for pop stars pipeline. Like he's done Miley Cyrus and Harry Styles records. And the new single, Everybody Laughs, is fun. It sounds like David Byrne. It's like got like, you know, Afro-Caribbean rhythms, orchestra, good hook. It's the kind of thing he's been doing ever since, you know, Remain in Light. Yeah. And then just to keep the full circle stuff going, Turnstile finally announced the full tour behind Never Enough. The recent shows they've been doing have kind of been like these one-off release shows, festival appearances, like their 3 to 4 a.m. set at Primavera Sound this past weekend, which, you know, we did not go to, but kudos to everybody who stayed up till 3 a.m. to see Turnstile, and to the band for doing that.
Yeah, and with the time difference, that would have been like 9 a.m. for us, something like that.
If you're coming from America and you're not like time zone regulated yet, it's like you're seeing them at breakfast.
Yeah.
But yeah, they announced their full tour, and every date is with Speed and Jane Remover, and then there's varying direct support from Mannequin Pussy, Amyl and the Sniffers, and Blood Orange, who also appears on the record and was on the last Turnstile record. He's on the same song as Hayley, Seeing Stars. And yeah, I mean, I think it's so cool because if you would have asked me prior to the tour announcement, like, who are some bands that are perfect to open for Turnstile, I would have had Mannequin Pussy and Speed in like the top 5. Like Speed are, I think, probably the biggest hardcore band in the world right now that still play like a very aggressive, like short, fast, kind of straightforwardly hardcore kind of thing. I mean, they kind of remind me of like where Turnstile were at circa Nonstop Feeling, like still a very tough aggro hardcore band, but with like little flashes of maybe there's more. And I interviewed Speed at Coachella, where they also, like, just to digress for a second, like before Coachella's lineup was announced, they always kind of like to have at least one hardcore band. And I just remember feeling like it's got to be Speed this year. And they delivered.
They're the chosen ones.
Yeah. But I interviewed them at Coachella and they were like, yeah, LP2 is in the works and they sounded like they were kind of saying like, it's going to take those little things we do that are a little bit outside of like the kind of just moshy, headbangy hardcore stuff. It sounded like they wanted to lean a little more into that stuff. So I do wonder if they're on a similar trajectory to Turnstile. They're obviously also hugely influenced by Turnstile and related band Trapped Under Ice and that kind of stuff. So I just felt like Speed is like the perfect band to kind of like be on a Turnstile show and give the crowd a taste of like the harder side of hardcore while also having this kind of crossover appeal. And then Mannequin Pussy is just like, they're almost like the inverse, where like Mannequin Pussy kind of came up a little bit more as like a DIY indie garagey kind of band, and like have kind of like turned into a band that has as many straight up fast hardcore songs on their latest record as Turnstile does on theirs, So it just feels perfect. Like and also Mannequin Pussy and Turnstile both just have great alt rock songs. Like, like Sometimes by Mannequin Pussy and Never Enough by Turnstile could have both come on K-Rock in 97, and then they both have just 1.5 to 2 minute songs that sound like they could be Bad Brain songs. So I think it's perfect. The Northeast dates have both Mannequin Pussy and Speed. So there's no New York date on there now. Might have to make the trip to Boston or Philly. It would be cool.
Definitely. And I mean, Amel as well, just one of the most exciting rock bands right now, and put them on a bill with Turnstile. It feels huge. It feels like a great chance to see both of those bands at once.
Yeah, also Australian for the record. And yeah, I saw them at Coachella too and totally agree. Like, just an undeniable live punk band with catchy songs. So like, and to me, Mannequin Pussy and Speed are like almost too good of a pairing, but then Amel's good because it's like kind of a different side of punk. So it's like maybe you get Amel fans who are kind of casually interested in Turnstile who go to the show. Like, it feels like you get a little more variety in the fan base of a Turnstile Amel show. We'll see.
Yeah, but Mannequin Pussy, Amel, similar in both being known for putting on a great live show and a visual live show. So, it's just going to be a good time all around.
Yes, both have really charismatic front women, and like you can't really be in their presence and not be like, holy shit, you're a rock star. So whether you know the songs or not, I think you walk away being like, that was awesome.
Yeah, exciting tour news, some good shows, but yeah, this week has also had a lot of shitty things, including our good friend Billy Jones has passed away at the age of 45, which has just been devastating for us and the New York City music scene in general, where he's had a giant impact over the past 20 years. For those that don't know Billy, I mean, gosh, at this point, I first met him over 20 years ago. He was booking at Chennai, which was a venue in New York City. And, BV I did a show there, but actually, strangely, Brooklyn Vegan's very first post was me posting a review and picture of a band, Other Passengers, who Billy was the frontman of. And I posted this really grainy photo of him on stage, which is still on Brooklyn Vegan to this day, August 2004. That was before I knew Billy, and we went on to become good friends through his work at Chennai, but more notably through his work at booking the club pianos in the Lower East Side. And Brooklyn Vegan did a ton of shows at pianos back in the day for CMJ, and we also did a series there called Rock and Roll on the Floor Laughing, where we booked bands combined with comedians. Some legendary lineups, I got to say, if you look back at those. So we became really close with Billy for years through that. Billy then went on, along with coworker Zach Mexico, to found and open the club Baby's All Right, which has become a really important venue in New York City still to this day. Since then, he's gone on to open newer club, Nightclub 101. He has his own record store, Billy's Record Salon, and more. You could actually just read the tribute on our site, but also look around. There's great tributes on a lot of Instagram accounts, including Billy's Record Salon, including pianos, including Baby's All Right. And he was just, I think how close I was to Billy, but also when you read all the tributes, I think about how many people were close to Billy and probably, also considered Billy a great friend. People talk about his smile, and it's unfair. Brain cancer, 45 years old. Rest in peace, Billy. Also this week, it just felt like it wasn't ending. Actually, we were just coming out of the unfortunate news of the death of booking agent Dave Shapiro, who was flying a plane that went down with himself and a bunch of other people. That really was one that rocked the music industry. Then there was Billy. We had Bonnaroo co-founder Jonathan Mayers passed away this week. It didn't stop. Sly Stone, Brian Wilson, Nitzer Ebbs, Douglas McCarthy. And I think, Brian Wilson, which was actually we found out about yesterday, day before this recording, especially a huge one for us and to you, Andrew.
Yeah. Before I talk about Brian, I want to say, I met Billy through you. And, on top of all his accomplishments, of which, like you said, they're endless, you really just can't look at the last 20 plus years of the New York City music scene without Billy's impact. Multiple clubs that he's either owned or booked were the spot, and still are. But on top of all that, like you also said, one of the nicest people that I've ever met in this whole music thing that, we do, I guess. Always welcoming. I don't know. I think it's really easy to feel a sense of imposter syndrome in the music world. You just look around and you're like, well, they're doing it, I'm not really doing it. And you feel like people are going to meet you and maybe feel more accomplished than you or something. And with Billy never gave that vibe off at all. He, everybody was as welcoming. Whatever you had done, accomplishment wise, didn't seem to matter to Billy. He was just a nice person. And I always loved going to Babies and finding him and, saying hello. And it was just, I have, when I think about all the many, many, many nights I've spent at Babies, I feel like I think of catching up with Billy as much as I think of whatever band I saw that night.
For sure. And his passion for music was real, infectious. And, part of the reason his clubs are so successful is he never lost that interest in new music, new bands, championing. There's so many artists that are associated specifically with the clubs he booked still to this day. So probably is still as of today, last week. So it's just, it's a huge loss. And it really sucks.
Yeah, no, it does. It's really sad. Like you said, it's not fair. Way too young. And even just looking at some of the tributes I've seen, it's from bands where I'm like, oh yeah, definitely saw this band at Babies multiple times, definitely like you said, there's a lot of artists that are you think of as being associated with the venue that he booked. Absolutely.
And a lot of Brooklyn Vegan shows at venues he booked. I think I forgot to mention earlier.
Didn't we do the first Babies show?
We did, which it wasn't planned that way, but we moved our annual CMJ shows to Babies, and then it just happened that CMJ landed when Babies was opening. And of course, like any venue, they opened a little later than planned. And it was like right down to the wire. One of our CMJ day parties ended up being the very first public shows at the venue.
Yeah. And that was honestly, I still think of that show. That's like one of my favorite CMJ day party. I mean, day party doesn't even describe it. It was a day and night party. Like it was just like a 12-hour show, I think, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how many massive bands played that too. I mean, massive now.
I want to say Hopalong was on that show. Courtney Barnett. But yeah, it was definitely like,
I mean, King Gizzard might have been on it. Head and the Heart were definitely on it.
Head and the Heart were on it. They were big already. They were like,
Yeah.
I think they played at noon and it was like line out the door. And yeah, it was really good times, really good memories.
Yeah. And so what else? Brian Wilson.
Yeah. Yeah. Rest in peace, Billy. Rest in peace, Brian Wilson. I mean, I wrote a tribute on BrooklynVegan.com. If you want to read my thoughts on Brian, maybe go there, because the time to sort them out is probably it probably sounds better than whatever I'm gonna ramble about on this podcast. But it was hard to know where to begin, because like, what can you say about Brian's impact that hasn't been said better hundreds or thousands of times, and will be this? I mean, there's tons of tributes coming out. You know, everybody knows what he did who has followed along all this time. Like, I don't know that I can contribute to the conversation something about Brian's impact that hasn't been said. So I tried to come at it a little bit more from like a personal essay standpoint, and just kind of be like, I'm going to kind of get into how Brian impacted my life. And hopefully if he impacted yours, maybe there's something there that you relate to. So I feel like for me, like the big thing was like, yeah, I mean, he just absolutely innovated pop music, like more than anybody except maybe the Beatles. And again, as people have said for years, he did by himself what at least Paul and John, if not also George and Ringo, did, plus their producer, George Martin. I mean, Brian was the producer, the arranger, the songwriter, and one of the lead singers. And I don't think that you're necessarily more talented if you do something alone versus with a team. Just like I don't think great pop singers who have co-writers are any worse than, you know, solo artists who are just like auteurs. But there's definitely something to be said for what Brian was able to do by himself. Absolutely. And yeah, I mean, he just he helped turn pop from strictly a singles oriented format into an album oriented format. He saw how high the ceiling for what pop music could be was. He saw that it could be a place for emotional vulnerability. He saw it could be a place for a spiritual journey. It didn't just have to be something you could sing and dance to, but it's also that. And he saw that too. Like that's why, like, if there's one thing that bothers me about some of the Beach Boys discourse, it's like, and I've seen it on Twitter this week, so I'm reacting to something I just saw. Like, oh, like, I'm so happy I was able to hear the good Beach Boys stuff and not just get caught up in like the fun stuff. And it's like, the fun stuff's amazing too. Just like with the Beatles, like, I Want to Hold Your Hand is a brilliant song, and so is the album Revolver, for totally different reasons. And I don't think you get one without the other. And I think it's a lot more exciting to listen to that early stuff. Like, if you love Pet Sounds, one of the greatest albums of all time, you really hear the roots of it when you go back, and it was very, very gradual. Like, you hear how they started out doing Surfin' USA, Surfin' Safari, all that stuff. And then like you listen to the arrangements on I Get Around and you're like, okay, wow, he's like, you know, he's kind of doing this more layered thing, way more complex than those early songs. Then you listen to California Girls and it's like, this is even more complex than I Get Around. Like, it's this very gradual thing. And you know, you listen to Side B of Today or In My Room and you hear the emotional, vulnerable, intimate balladry that becomes a song like Caroline No. So it's, you know, he saw all this stuff and he heard it, and like, he brought it to us, and we're so grateful. And I'm both at a loss for words and afraid I'm going to talk too much.
What's your favorite Beach Boys album?
Smile. Smile is my favorite album of all time. And I mean, if it needs an introduction. Smile was supposed to be the follow-up to Pet Sounds. It was supposed to come out in 1967, and then due to pressure from Brian's label, Mike Love, his bandmate, who didn't like the direction Brian's songwriting was going in, Brian's father, Murray, who's the band's former manager, always getting in the way of stuff, Brian's mental health getting in the way of stuff. The first single was Good Vibrations. That came out. It topped the charts, and then Smile was abandoned when it was like 90-something% finished. Over the years, songs would roll out on other records. Brian ended up, he was working in like the top of the top record studios that existed. And then he built a studio in his house and recorded this album called Smiley Smile, which is like a lot of the material from Smile, but in this like lo-fi bedroom way. I mean, he basically invents bedroom pop on that record. So it's like, as much as I'm like, oh, I can't believe Smile never came out, it's like silver lining is he invents this other really important style of music that probably took a few decades to kind of become a style of music. And then once it did, you're like, oh my God, like Brian was doing this in 1967, way before, whoever. I mean, could trace anything from like Elliott Smith to Neutral Milk Hotel to like other Elephant Six things. And I mean, now bedroom pop is used to describe anything from This Is Lorelei to Claro. So it's like, it all goes back to Smiley Smile. In any case, finally, like bootlegs appear over the years. In 2004, Brian reworks those songs into a solo record called Brian Wilson Presents Smile. He performs it live. Paul McCartney and George Martin are in the audience. There's a concert film. It's magical. It's amazing. And then in 2011, he uses the track list from that version to go back, dig through all the original Smile tapes, and release the Smile sessions. And the disc one is basically the album Smile. It's never going to be exactly what we would have gotten if it had come out in 1967, but having like obsessed over this for years, I'd say it's pretty damn close to whatever we would have gotten. So to me, that's a record. That is the album Smile. It now exists. It's existed for 14 years in a version that Brian himself signed off on. So that's my favorite album of all time. It is, I think that, they were in this, sorry, I'm like, I just feel like I'm talking way too much about Brian Wilson, but that's just what I do when you ask me questions about Brian Wilson. But they were kind of in this creative rivalry with the Beatles, where it's like the Beatles do Rubber Soul, which is kind of arguably the first album-oriented pop album. And then Brian hears that and is like, I could do something like that. He does Pet Sounds. Paul McCartney hears that and he's like, oh my God. And then he brings the idea to the Beatles to do Sgt. Pepper's, which is directly because of Pet Sounds. And then Brian is working on Smile while Beatles are working on Sgt. Pepper's, as well as the sessions that produce Magical Mystery Tour. Because as the story also goes, Brian hearing Strawberry Fields Forever on the radio contributed to him feeling like the Beatles beat him at his own game, which is crazy. They didn't, but amazing lore. So I think had Smile come out in 67, Beatles would have heard it and been like, oh my God, now we have to try to top that. And then we would have probably, instead of getting White Album, we would have gotten some other Beatles album that tried to top Smile. Who knows? Endless possibilities. So anyway, it's just like, I feel like Smile, it took psychedelic pop, art pop, Baroque pop, whatever, to a higher place than Sgt. Pepper took it to. And it's just crazy to think what could have happened. So yeah, I mean, best record of all time. Do you have a favorite Beach Boys album or song or any particular memories that you can share so I can shut up about Brian Wilson?
Nope. But I am curious to hear your top 5 bands of the past 20 years who are clearly influenced by the Beach Boys.
Like the most Beach Boysy ones, like the best and most Beach Boysy.
The best and most Beach Boysy of the past 20 years.
Okay. Animal Collective and Panda Bear as one, because definitely. Fleet Foxes, Grizzly Bear, The Shins, who I would say is more like the earlier Beach Boys. And then 5.
MGMT?
It's tough because this is where I'm like, okay, MGMT, Flaming Lips, Tame Impala, Yeasayer, all these bands that are like in that realm. But I'm like, whereas like Panda Bear, Animal Collective, and Fleet Foxes are like so overtly Beach Boys. So it's like, I mean, any psychedelic pop band you could name, but you said 20 years, so I guess I can't say Weezer. But I'm going to say that the Jessica Pratt album from last year was very, very influenced by Brian Wilson and Pet Sounds and the Beach Boys. So that's like the most recent example of something that's like really, really Brian inspired. So the last Jessica Pratt album, I think, is where I'll stop this list. Meanwhile, I mean, fellow 60s era icon who went through mental health struggles in the pursuit of a masterpiece. Shout out Patrick Lyons for kind of putting that wording in my head. He tweeted something like that, and I was just like, yes, that's a really good way to put it. I mean, Sly Stone, like, the thing about the 60s is it's like creativity in music was progressing at such an insane rate that like music from 1966 sounds noticeably different than music from 1965. And it's like, you would have fallen behind. Like if in 1966 you were making a record that would have sounded like it could have come out in 1965, it would be like already passé, which is crazy. So I think that's why like still in the present day of music from the 60s, you're like, how did this come out in the 60s? It's so ahead of its time, because it's just like, that's the way it was. And I mean, that's absolutely true for Sly and the Family Stone. He just like really helped invent psychedelic soul, psychedelic funk, you know, something that also, like, he was Prince 20 years before Prince was Prince. I would say that like he helped pave the way for George Clinton and Parliament Funkadelic. And then to bring up examples that are extremely current, like, I mean, without Sly Stone, like, you don't get Frank Ocean, you don't get Beyonce songs like Ya Ya and Freedom, you don't get Solange, Janelle Monáe. Like, it's so much of the most interesting music in recent times. You can hear direct parallels to what Sly Stone was doing in the late 60s and early 70s. And just like Brian Wilson, you know, like writing this music that for 60 years later, there are artists trying their best to write their version of music like that, and it still doesn't sound outdated, which is crazy when you think about, again, how outdated it would have sounded to sound like 1966 in 1967. But if you sound like 1966 in 2025, you might be making the album of the year. So I don't know how that works, but yeah, I mean, and then you just, again, like, way before my time, but you have to watch live footage of Sly Stone, because the albums are amazing. But I think seeing Sly in action is like, and that's one difference between him and Brian Wilson. Brian was really a studio person. He stopped touring with the Beach Boys. He didn't like touring. You do not need to watch live footage of Brian Wilson, but you absolutely need to watch live footage of Sly Stone. I mean, he comes to life on stage. Like it's just like, I mean, so much of his magic is in the performance. And yeah.
I was lucky enough to be able to do that, actually. And I mean, I don't know. I don't have the full history of how often Sly performed. I know he took a lot of time off and it was rare, but he did come back for a bit in 2007. They played a bunch of shows. There were mixed reviews on each of them. Like, some of them he wasn't really on, but the one I went to, it was a late show at BB King's in December 2007. And yeah, it was amazing. I wrote at the time that it was amazing. You can still read that on Brooklyn Vegan, actually, which actually helped jog my memory. But yeah, it was something like a 2-hour show. And yeah, feel really fortunate to have gotten to experience that. I don't know that he's played since.
And I feel really jealous. I did get to see Brian Wilson twice. I saw him play Pet Sounds in full at McCarran Park, which was awesome and crazy. And I saw him when the Beach Boys did their 50th anniversary tour that he reunited with the band for. That was really fun too. While we're going full circle stuff, because we love our full circle moments, Turnstile, one of their most iconic moments is a Sly Stone reference. The "Thank you for letting me be myself."
Very true. Very cool. It all comes back to Turnstile.
Always. It all comes back to Turnstile and Brian Wilson if I'm on your podcast. Well, I think whenever you lose, you know, these veterans like this, I think it's it makes you remember not to take for granted like how many of the most original or just really, really long running rock legends or music legends do still exist. So do you want to talk about a couple new albums from two very, very long running artists that we should not take their existence for granted?
I do, although you were also putting in my mind that people in Liverpool this past week were lucky enough to see Paul McCartney himself come out on stage and play with Bruce Springsteen. That's a hugely special moment that just happened. But yes, there are two new albums out. Well, sort of, by legends. Neil Young is back with a new album, and The Cure have put out an amazing new album last year. We gushed about it nonstop on BV, and they return this week today with a remix album, which is also amazing.
The first thing that struck me about the remix album is it just reminded me how much I love the last album. Like, I mean, when it comes out, I think you get that sort of recency bias, newness, excitement thing where you're like, could this be one of the best Cure albums in their whole catalog? And now we're like almost a year later, and then hearing those songs again via these remixes, I was like, no, this is like absolutely one of the best. Like this could be like a top 5 Cure album, like the last one, Songs of a Lost World. Like definitely top 10, but it could honestly be even more than that.
And no surprise at all, the list of curators is amazing. The Cure is always, curated amazing lineups on whether their own festival that they were doing for years. So yeah, you've got Fortet, Deftones, Chino Marino, Mogwai, Orbital, Daniel Avery.
Yeah, and like the remix album is like, I mean, if no complaints, but if I had to, it's got like I think 24 tracks. It's like kind of a lot of remixes for an 8-song album.
I'll admit I haven't heard them all yet, but what I've heard has been amazing.
It's a good listen. I think if you were like, I don't listen to remix albums, you should still try it because it's really fun. I'm not remembering exactly which are which, but there are some that are like really dancey, and it's just very cool to hear these like sad, depressing, mopey Robert Smith songs with like a club beat. Like I want to, like, I hope that like the next like DJs who do raves in Brooklyn or whatever, that I hope they pick up some of these tracks because it'd be fun to hear in that environment. But like, absolutely love the Fortet remix. It's so cool, I think, when an electronic musician has such a distinct style that it's them, like without there being a vocalist to cue you in on who you're listening to. Like, I don't know you have more experience in the electronic world than me, so I don't know if you think that's naive to say. But like, I was doing dishes with the album on, and the Fortet remix started, and I was like, that's obviously Fortet. And it was like just so cool to hear like, oh, this sounds exactly like Fortet with The Cure. Like it was an exact combination of those two things. What could be better?
No, totally. There was also the perfect segue to that next album we were talking about, because hey, it sounds exactly like Neil Young.
Yeah. Neil Young, again, don't take it for granted. Neil Young's got like over 50 albums that all sound the same. Or no, that's not true. He has over 50 albums that all sound like kind of one of 3 things. Like it's either like Neil in an acoustic guitar, really quiet, melancholic and somber, or Neil doing like proto grunge, or Neil doing kind of like nice country rock. I feel like you're always going to get like one of those 3 things. And I think it's really cool that on the new album, Talking to the Trees, it's his first album with his new backing band, the Chrome Hearts, which is basically members of Promise of the Real, who are a backing band he's been using in recent years, as well as Spooner Oldham, who was the organ player on Harvest Moon. So that's cool that he's back in the fold. And it's mainly a protest album, very, 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 very much like about what's going on in the world right now. So even that alone makes it like, yeah, does this sound like something Neil could have written in the 70s? Totally. But like lyrically, definitely not, because it's about what's happening right now. And it's not vague, it's like very much like you could always, you can get those like, not gonna throw anybody under the bus, but you get those like punk bands who are kind of like, oh, everything sucks, I'm gonna write this like, non-specific like fuck the government slogan punk song, and it's gonna totally hit. And it's like, this is like super generic, like it's not about anything. But Neil is talking about what's happening right now in a very specific way. He uses his voice to be present in the current day, and that is, I think, just great to see from someone who's been around as long as him.
Yeah. And I mean, to his credit, he does that even when he's not writing songs.
Exactly. Yeah. It's weird. You mentioned Springsteen, like there's been this like Trump versus Springsteen saga. And then Neil is like not even part of it. And he's just like speaking up, being like, I'm on Bruce's side. And here's why. Like,
yeah, it's also there's been a lot of those dependable protest voices. Billy Joe Armstrong just posted something pretty strong on his Instagram in support of what's going on. The protests in LA, which Tom Morello was posted himself at those protests in LA. Phineas, Billie Eilish's brother, producer, claims he got tear gassed at protests in LA.
Yeah.
What else came out this week?
A couple other things. Brooklyn rapper LaKelly 47 has taken the mask off for her new album, LaKelly featuring 47 / for promotional use only. And it's just another really fun record of her sort of dance rap R&B hybrids. Iron Mind, Australian hardcore band. Speaking of Speed, it's their first album in 11 years. They're on the same 2 labels as Speed, Flat Spot in America, Last Ride in Australia. Great record. And I think if you like what Speed is doing, they've kind of become the ambassadors in America for the Australian hardcore scene. But as they themselves said in that same interview I referenced earlier, they're the tip of the iceberg. So you want to keep digging. Iron Mind's first album in 11 years. That's a good place to start. View from the Soyas, Tokyo melodic death metal band. It's their debut record, Ubiquitous, following some very cool EPs, including one for the trusty American hardcore label Days. The record has guest appearances from members of Cruelty, Foreign Hands, and another Japanese band called Tive. Cruelty also being Japanese, Foreign Hands a US band. Really cool. It's like At the Gates in Flames kind of stuff, but also like a little bit of Slayer, a little bit of like American metalcore, and it's pretty much part of the current hardcore scene. So there's also that angle. I talk about all of those and Neil Young in my weekly reviews column, Notable Releases. And then Bill talks about The Cure in his weekly reviews column, Indie Basement, where he's also got, speaking of King Gizzard, the new record from them, the ever genre-changing band. This time it's an orchestral album called Phantom Island, and they have an orchestral tour coming up. Ride bassist Steve Queralt, his debut solo record, Swallow, is out, and it features 2 songs with Emma Anderson of Lush, and also one with, I don't want to butcher this name, but Veretti Sussman of Electrolane and Memorials. And also Bill's album of the week this week is the latest from Welsh indie band The Bug Club, out now on Sub Pop. Also in Indie Basement, Triptide's Zamrock Pioneers Witch, and a new EP from Pip Blom.
We also got a bunch of exciting new songs this week, as always, but you already mentioned that new David Byrne album, which there is a new song that you can hear now. We also got a new song from Drain, who just announced their 3rd album, Is Your Friend, which, yes, you were talking about Speed earlier on the Turnstile tour, easily could have been Drain.
Yeah, I mean, as far, like, I was thinking when I said Speed is probably the biggest, like, really hard, tough, aggressive hardcore band right now, in the back of my head was like, well, it's either Speed or Drain.
I mean, as far as bands from recent years, for sure.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Like newer hardcore bands that just do like the really kind of harder side, like not crossing over into alternative rock,
Right.
But surprisingly big. And I would, we probably credit a lot of that to the Turnstile effect. People kind of just paying more attention to hardcore. But yeah, Drain are such a heavy band that, like, I mean, they're in the hardcore scene, but like they're also very much kind of a metal band.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. Unlike Speed, Drain are as much of a thrash band, and that new song that they just released, Nights Like These, really leans into that metal side.
Yeah, I mean, you like a lot of people thrash and also groove, right? Like they get compared to like Pantera a lot. Like, I mean, wouldn't you grew up on that stuff? Like, does Drain like take you back to that kind of late 80s, early 90s era of like thrash and groove metal?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, that first part of the reason I love that first Drain album so much is the Pantera I heard in it. So,
But I do think, and that's, so it's like, here's what's interesting to me is it's like they have that Pantera side, and then you're like, oh man, it's so cool. It's like Pantera. And like, for me with hardcore, like I lean more, I like the stuff that leans more punk than metal. But Drain are like really appealing to me too, because it's like, as like they know they're metal, but they're like not evil, you know? Like they are so fun and bright, and it like you absolutely see it at the shows where they have people in shark costumes and beach balls and surfboards in the crowd, and Sammy just smiling the whole time. And also like Sammy, one of the most animated, bright, lively, happy, smiley people I've ever interviewed in my entire life.
And a very proud Grateful Dead fan.
Yes, loves the Grateful Dead, has also shouted out the Beach Boys, got that California fun surf in their music as well, like more symbolically and visually than musically. But, you know, there's no Beach Boys, there's no Drain without Beach Boys, like in a way. But Drain would be a little bit different if there were no Beach Boys. That's how I'll say it. But yeah, it's like it comes through like Drain aren't scary. Like they're very fun, and they have these riffs that could be Pantera songs, but they don't have like that evilness associated with that kind of stuff. They're just like this fun band. And I think then that's true of Speed too. Like Speed have a song called Not That Nice, which is ironic because they're like the nicest band in hardcore. Like, but yeah, like if, you know, and a Drain and Speed live shows, you can't stand still. You can't keep the smile off your face. So fun. Wait, has there ever been a Drain Speed tour? That would be too much fun. I don't know if anyone could handle it.
It needs to happen.
Another new song I want to shout out this week. I'm very biased here, but Moving Mountains announced their first album in 12 years, Pruning of the Lower Limbs. It's out in just 2 weeks. Very cool to announce an album, and it's coming real quickly. And I'm biased because I grew up in the same music scene as these guys. I went to high school and college with some of the members. So they're like my hometown band, kind of like. I got to see them in the earliest stages, got to watch them rise. So there's a very, very sentimental connection for me. So again, like if you're looking for an unbiased review, you'll have to look elsewhere. But the new song Ghosts is really good. They're like a post-rocky emo band. And I think they left off on a really good note with their self-titled record. 2 years later, they put out a split with Prawn that had like one of my favorite songs they've ever written called Deathless, and it was just like left you wanting more. And then now, a decade removed from that split, this new song kind of picks up right where they had left off. So I'm really happy about it. So check that out if you care about post-rocky emo music.
Speaking of Frank Ocean and Legends, Mavis Staples just covered Frank Ocean.
Yeah, really, really good cover too. Really cool to hear.
And Margot Price, who has a new album on the way, also just released a new song this week.
Yep. It's called Don't Let the Bastards Get You Down. Oh, also, I should shout out that if you're as excited for Drain as we are, we have an exclusive vinyl variant for pre-order in the online BB shop. So shop.brooklynvegan.com if you're into Drain.
And if you're not into Drain, we have lots of other vinyl in there as well. Shop.brooklynvegan.com. In other news, Clips just announced their first tour in 15 years. 3-6 Mafia and Bone Thugs and Harmony also announced a tour, which is amazing. And collectively, that's some epic rap tour announcements. DJ Quick is on that 3-6 Mafia Bone Thugs tour. Charlie XCX joined Air at a Paris festival for Cherry Blossom Girl. We talked a little bit about Primavera Sound happening, but yeah, there was a lot of exciting clips coming out of that. Check Brooklyn Vegan Instagram for more, including footage of Black Flag's first show with their new lineup. And Orange 9mm released a new song, their first in 26 years, with a slightly new lineup of the band.
Yeah, and just in case you hadn't heard, that Black Flag lineup is Greg Ginn, who is 71, with 3 members who all seem like they're about 20 years old, give or take. Kind of a weird thing to witness. Not exactly sure how they can justify calling it Black Flag, but is what it is. Meanwhile, we also just recently got the return of Flag, which is the other Black Flag band who has a lot of real Black Flag members like Keith Morris, Bill Stevenson, also of Descendants, Des Cadena, Chuck Dukowski, and then Stephen Egerton from the Descendants plays guitar with them. They played their first show in 6 years at Punk Rock Bowling. Full video of that is also very easily watchable. And Flag is a blast. I hope they do more shows because I had one of the most fun times of my life seeing a Flag show. Keith Morris, meanwhile, has been a lot more busy with Circle Jerks, who I also saw at Coachella. Coachella was very punk and hardcore this year. Shout out to Golden Voice for sticking to their roots.
Till next week.
Thanks for tuning in. Stay tuned for new episodes of BV Weekly every Friday morning. And if you like what you heard, like, subscribe, give us a good rating, tell your friends about us. All that little stuff goes a really long way, and we really appreciate it. Thanks to Joe D'Agostino from Cymbals and Guitars and Empty Country for our theme song. Thanks to our co-producer Kevin Duffel, our mix engineer Nick Gray, and Dave and I will see you next week.